You know, there's so much really great advice here on YouTube on how you can move forward and capture beautiful wildlife photos. But sadly, at the same time, a lot of this advice is based on things that are so impractical, like travel off to an exotic location, or buy a prime telephoto lens, a lens that often goes for $5, $10, even as much as $13,000. It's not practical. In this video, I want to share some tips and ideas that you can move forward with to absolutely capture far better photos right now today. Tip number one is to honor what's truly most important, and that is to capture a sharp image and to focus on that before focusing on other factors. And one thing I hear all the time is to lower your shutter speed and thus your ISO values to reduce the noise in your image. It's common knowledge. As your ISO goes up, your image gets noisier. So in the past, key word right there, in the past, what we did was continually lower the ISO and shutter speed in order to capture a beautiful photo. But motion blur is something that ruins so many great photos. And for me personally, I much rather have a tack sharp photo. So what I like to do is focus on shutter speeds really hardly ever below 1000 based on tip number two. And tip number two is to use noise removal software. This is now incorporated into tools like Lightroom for desktop, and one of the big mistakes that I made was putting this off because I got really comfortable with using Lightroom Mobile, which does not have noise reduction included in the app, which is too bad. Check this out. This is an image I captured using a 200 to 600 zoom lens, so not as sharp as a prime, obviously. Furthermore, I'm using a 1.4 teleconverter, and I'm shooting with an ISO value of 12,800. And if you look here around the ears of this particular squirrel, you can see there's so much noise, it really degrades the color, the vibrancy, and definitely reduces the impact or the perceived sharpness. Fact of the matter is, this is a very sharp photo, and after reapplying or re-editing just days ago inside of Lightroom on a desktop, this is the same image, and you can see here just how much sharper this image appears. It's the same image, just with noise reduction applied. And here's another example. This particular image was captured at ISO 6400 and cleaned up so beautifully. And the post was liked by nearly 900 people in just a few weeks online. And this brings us to tip number three: keep shooting. Especially if you're following all of these tips together, it'll help you to capture more photos, better photos, and this photo is a great example. I was nearly done with my day. I had been shooting elk in beautiful Rocky Mountain National Park. I captured so many stunning images, and yet this was the one that people really gravitated towards. I think this one really highlights what I would want to see. I can see that this elk is in a beautiful forest. I can see these majestic pine trees in the background. It's up on a hill. The frame is great, yet the ISO was pretty damn high again, 6400, because the light was almost completely gone. But I had been using the desktop software, Lightroom, denoising my images, and this is the photo I got. So for me, the learning moment was that oftentimes I've got in my head that I want to be in beautiful, soft, golden hour light, and yet this photo is anything but. It's flat. There was hardly any color in it, but the fact that I'm really focusing on spending just a little bit of time editing my better photos, I'm able to come away with a beautiful photo just like this. Keep shooting, because the more photos you shoot, the more likely you're going to come away with something that's really special. And it's hard to know what photo in the field is going to be the winner. When it comes to photography, this is one of the most divisive pieces of gear out there, a teleconverter. And the fact of the matter is, you're going to hear so much advice on what you should and should not do here on YouTube. And Fact of the matter is there is so much really helpful advice on YouTube. I've never really read a book, taken a class. I've just experimented, gotten out in the field with my cameras, taken a lot of photos, and I've watched a ton of YouTube videos. One of the things I was thinking about was about this piece of gear. Should you or should you not use a teleconverter? Well, here's what I would say. I like to pay attention to those content creators that are doing what I'm doing. You'll hear all kinds of people say not to use a teleconverter, and yet you'll watch all kinds of incredible wildlife photographers talk about how they use teleconverters. So take your advice from those people in the field that are doing the thing you want to do. Oh, and when it comes to teleconverters, I pass on the 2 times, but I often use the 1.4, and it really depends on the gear and the situation. I'll make an updated video moving forward. Tip number 5 is a doozy. It really fast-tracked my results, allowing me to capture some images I'm proud of within days of buying a 200 to 600 lens and tracking birds in flight. It'll do the same for you. It's simple. Shoot every day, no matter what, for 1 month, just 1 month, get out and shoot every day. And fact of the matter is, this is fun, especially when you get a new camera, a new lens, really the new lens. When you start getting out to 400 millimeters, 500, 600 millimeters, it's really fun and exciting. And the more you shoot every day, the better. Bonus points if you focus on birds in flight, or really anything that's flying. And the reason why is this is one of the most challenging things to learn how to do well when you're in the field. And when it happens, like when this red-tailed hawk flew over my home, I'm chatting with my neighbor. I didn't even think about it. It was just memory reflex, right? I just took a few photos and I was good to go. Practice makes me a better photographer, and it'll do the same for you. Tip number 6 is to use autofocus continuous and shoot in your camera's fastest burst mode. That's it. And tip number 7 is to buy the best gear you possibly can afford and be open to buying used, because you might actually come away with a far better kit when you think about going the used route. Specifically, I'm thinking about where we're at with the technology today. The autofocus, the frames per second, the fact that these cameras are so amazing, hybrid. They're great for video, they're great for photo, and the fact of the matter is you might think about buying a new camera, but you might get a much more powerful camera. It's just a better kit all around if you buy used. The Sony, the Canon R5 and the Sony A1 are great examples. These are flagship cameras that were extremely expensive when they came out. And there will be new cameras coming out like the Sony A9 Mark III that may entice you. But in this regard, and we'll have to see what the specs are, but I bet it won't be a 50 megapixel sensor. And with that, you could get the A1 that shoots extremely fast, has that high resolution sensor and more for around the same price point as buying something, again, new. And the same could be said with Canon specifically. I'm not really sure about Nikon because Nikon is just starting to catch up. But, you know, be open to really thinking about buying used. Tip number 8. 45 minutes or less. When you want to do some photography in the morning or at sunset, focus on places that you can get to within 45 minutes. It'll save you a boatload of money on gas. It really starts to add up fast. Number 2, it's just less taxing. If you want to photograph in the morning, sunrise, and you're looking at a place that takes 90 minutes, 2 hours to get to, you'll literally will find yourself waking up at 2 a.m. in the morning. And to be fair, this is something that I do, and I think it's a great exercise to really push yourself to be at the right place at the right time. But it's really hard to keep that up, and it's dangerous, and driving at night, it's hard. Instead, Find the place you can get to within 45 minutes and you'll be there more often. You'll learn the area. You'll take more photos. It's more enjoyable. You get the idea. And with that, expect bumps along the way. It's gonna happen. It's challenging. Photography takes years to learn. But I want to leave you with one really powerful bonus tip, one that will allow you to find so much amazing wildlife where you live. And the video on the screen covers that exact video. Click that and or subscribe if you haven't already. If you've made it this far, hey, thanks for watching. I appreciate it. And I'll see you in the next one.